I'm Zoe from Paranormal Extraction, and welcome to my show. Today we have Crystal Skulls and Human Heads, Mark Ollie. I mean, what a book. If you're really into science, you're gonna love this book. Now, he's an archaeologist. He's written 6 books. He's been on TV several times. He's a minister, and guess what? He is also a musician. I mean, let's talk about being very eclectic. But anyways, you're gonna love this, and we're gonna go over and we're gonna start our interview with Crystal Skulls and Human Heads, Mark Ollie. Hi. Hey.
Hi.
Oh my God. Okay, it's so
nice
good
to see you.
Let's see the cover of your book.
Okay, here we go. This is it. There we go. Crystal Skulls and Human Heads.
I just absolutely love the cover of that.
Yeah, it's a human skull contained inside a crystal skull. So there you go.
Wow. Okay, so hey Mark, tell us a little bit. I mean, I just gave them a little bit of information about you. Did you want to expand on that at all, or tell them a little bit?
I can do. Primarily, I'm an archaeologist by profession. That's what I do. I'm a musician because I suppose that's what I am. If somebody said, what do you do? I'd say, well, I do archaeology. Who am I? I'd say I am basically a drummer. I play drums for a band called Copperworm, and we're just about to release the first album. So that's going to be interesting. That's coming out in the second half of this year. But yes, I've got loads of interest in so many different areas: paranormal, scientific, all sorts of different things.
You absolutely amaze me, because I'm just wondering, how do you fit in the 6 books and the drummer and the band coming out? I mean, I know about being a musician because Dee, the executive producer of this show, okay, it's not on TV yet, but it will be. He used to be in a band that opened for big headline, like Kansas and, the Scorpions, all those different type of people. So I know from him, talking to him about putting together a CD, it's an amazing process.
Yes, we have definitely got enough material to do an album, and it's took us a long time. The songwriters, who are obviously the guitarists and the singer part of the band, they've been putting the album together now for about 2 years, so that's coming up ready for release. So I wasn't really involved in that process. So in that sense, I'm the lucky one. I sort of come in at the end, hit a lot of things in time, and ta-da, there it is.
You're so lucky.
In between times, I get a chance to write. I do only produce about a book every 2 to 3 years.
Drummers rule, tell them.
It's not too time consuming.
Okay, all right. Well, you got really lucky there. So why don't we start with give me an idea of what Crystal Skulls and Human Heads is about.
Okay, I started the book during lockdown because obviously we've all been through something of a trauma over the last few years, and music had sort of died, and me going out giving talks and events had died, so it gave me time to write. But I thought, well, we're dealing with sort of humanity and the human race, and this is a real challenge to us, that something as small as a bacteria or a virus could literally bring the world to a standstill. So I thought, well, as an archaeologist, I'm aware of the fact that it's not perhaps the first time that that's happened. So what I decided to do was go back, start with the very earliest human remains that we had, and sort of work through, if you like, human history, human species, one at a time, looking to see what had happened in the past. And the common denominator is, it doesn't matter what species you are, it doesn't matter what country you come from, it doesn't even matter what art style you follow or society you're a part of. The common denominator is that we've all got heads, we've all got skulls, we've all got faces, So that's really the birth of the book. It was a logical step to look for something that you would find everywhere, that everybody could understand, and it covers all the time periods as well. So that was very good. I mean, it gave me this, it literally gave me a peg to hang my hat on, very much in a literal sense. And that was the idea for the book, was to see where that would take me as an adventure.
Okay, and where did this take you as an adventure? I mean, I know that you talk about a little bit in your book about, the catastrophes that have happened.
Yeah.
What on earth regarding this, how does that play into it?
Okay. Are we still good to go?
Yeah, we're
Just
still...
click on the screen outside of it.
Oh, sorry. I pushed something I shouldn't have because I got my hands moving too much here today. I'm all over the place.
You're not allowed to wave your hands around, but I can because I'm nowhere near anything.
Yeah, so anyways, we were talking about this in regards to, I guess, disasters, and where is that taking us today?
Okay, I can answer that. The further back you look, the further forward you can see. That seems to be a principle. So when I was looking back, I was thinking, well, there's been so many things happened in the past. We've had asteroids hit, we've had meteorites come down, we've had tidal waves and flooding, we've had the ice caps melting. There's even been comets that have come in and sort of hit us. And that's affected lots and lots of things. Everybody knows about the dinosaurs going extinct and that sort of thing.
Sure.
But the further back I went, the further I discovered that exact same process has happened to us. So I was finding that through the modern day discipline of DNA, they're discovering that some of the people that lived in the past are not the same as us. So you end up with Neanderthals, which I think most people know about.
Right.
They're, fundamentally different from us as a species. But there's also Denisovans, which are another sort of mystery race that are genetically different. And then you end up with, there's a couple of races from the East, there's a race, I think, from Africa, and there's a couple of races from the Americas, all of whom have different DNA. Now, none of them are here now. They've all disappeared. So I sort of went back and I had a look at all of that, and then I pushed it forward. I took that past and I kind of pushed it forward. And I said, okay, there's this big thing now about global warming and us going green and, are we going to survive? What's going to be the next disaster? Well, I suppose the good news is that with the right kind of care and the right kind of management, the planet will carry on. It has carried on. We've survived all of those disasters that I've listed. So the book itself, I think, has a very positive message. Yes, it's got its low points where, entire species die out. But at the end of it, it's kind of in the zip line. It says the mystical history of glass and the extinction of the world. Well, the extinction of the world bit is the positive message at the end to say, no matter how bad it gets, whether we get it right or we get it wrong, it doesn't really matter because the planet, the world, just seems to roll on regardless. It just carries on. So that's kind of where I ended up, which was what I was hoping would happen. I mean, I didn't, start out to do that, but it's ended up that way.
Right.
And it pulls us up by our bootlaces. It gets us out of the last couple of years of, relative horror that we've been through in a very positive way.
Okay, now my question is what does this have to do with the skull? Is the skull, are you getting the DNA from the skull, or how does that relate to the crystal skulls and the human head?
Okay, good question. Well, as I said at the beginning, everybody has one.
Right.
So you've got a nice commonality there. Some of the fossil skulls we've got from hundreds of thousands of years ago are no use at all when it comes to DNA because they've all been turned to stone. So there's no DNA in there. But if you go back sort of 40 to 50,000 years, you start to get organic remains. You start to get human skulls that we can take DNA from.
Okay.
And some of the bones of some of the species like Neanderthals also give up DNA. And that's painting a picture of a sort of almost like a Lord of the Rings type world, because you've got tiny little hobbit people like Homo floresiensis, which are tiny. I mean, fully grown as adults, they were only about 3'6" tall. all the way through to, if you like to go that far, you can go as far as the biblical giants,
Yes.
which could have been 20, 30, maybe even 40 foot tall.
Sure.
But we know that human beings could probably reach 10 feet. So,
Right.
you've got sort of all these different heights and different sizes, and then you've got different types as well. I was finding you've got Neanderthals which look different from us. They're more solid, they're heavier, they're more muscular. But then you've also got these South American Paracas, who were around up to about 500 or 600 years ago. It's only a relatively recent extinction. And this is where the aliens interest creeps in, because you've got these enormous skulls, very, very tall skulls, that are 3 times or more the capacity of a normal modern skull. Now that opens up all kinds of questions. And it's in South America where these crystal skulls are found. So there seems to be some kind of overlap between the way that the South Americans approach things and the fact that they were different from us. There seems to be some link there. So I really started to investigate that and try and find out why they chose quartz crystal, why they chose that, as a thing.
Yeah, so why did they, because you do talk about the crystal head, so let's go off in that direction, because you said they chose that. So let's expand on that.
Okay. There was a legend in the 1970s, it was quite a famous legend, that if enough of these skulls could be brought back together, somehow the gathering of crystal skulls would enlighten the world, and they would somehow have some kind of information or something to impart, and things would change. Well, if you go back to the 1970s, there were not that many skulls back then. Going back sort of through the 1900s into the late 1800s, you probably only had 20 or 30 of these skulls knocking around. Okay. And then all of a sudden, because they became famous, you've got lots and lots of what I call faked modern-day machine-made ones being produced. There are tens of thousands of them now. So by crystal skulls, I'm really talking about the older ones, the much older ones.
Now, I think I've done a little reading about those. I think they said there was only like 6 or 4 or something like that, and they had to do something with spirituality, or metaphysical, or it could be alien origin or something like that. Is that true? Okay, I want to know.
Well, okay. Back to the question. Back to the question of why, and I suppose the other question is what? Sure. What on earth are they? I suppose if you look at the older ones, they've got to be handmade for a start. You can't be doing them on machines.
Yes.
They've got to be made of something that's quartz-based, quartz silica based, so that seems to be part of it. Nearly all of them are life-size or very close to life-size. Mm-hmm. And the absolute peach of all of them is the Mitchell Hedges one, which has a completely movable separate jaw. It's anatomically perfect. It must have took perhaps 100 years to get it as smooth as it is, because there's no tool marks on it whatsoever. You can't find any. And it's crystal clear. It's an amazing piece of quartz.
But they said this came from the aliens, okay? I'm butting in, sorry.
I'm heading in the direction of aliens, okay?
Okay. Because I had to say it, okay.
Well, yeah, of course.
So the one with the moving jaw we just talked about. Move on. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, it's fantastic, because I do tend to wander sometimes. I lose track of where I'm at. Well, the alien connection is the fact that there is a lot of technology involved in quartz silica. It is an amazing substance. It's electrical. It interferes with magnetic fields. You can see it on Kirlian photography. We use quartz to power things like wristwatches. We make glass, we make silicon chips out of it. It's everywhere. In fact, I think I said in one of the other interviews, we're a carbon-based life form, but we live in a silicon-based world. Everything, sand, building materials, bath sealant, you name it, it's all made of the same stuff. It's all silica. To the point where they now actually think that planet Earth itself is a giant quartz silica crystal flying through space, because it's the only thing that you can model as an Earth's core, as a planet core. It's the only thing that works, because it contains all of the things I mentioned. It's got the electricity, the gravity, everything functions. And the question there is, how on earth would they know that in the past? Because as the skull is the centre of the body, and it's where all the senses are, we live in our heads, we live in our skulls. Planet Earth itself is like a giant quartz skull. You know, it exists, it contains all of those things in itself. And that's amazing. I mean, just as a sort of a sideline, I even tried to find out where silica appears in the human body. And it turns out if you don't have enough silica, as you're developing as a baby, it affects the brain and the skull.
Oh my
so
God.
How on earth would you know that? You know, if you go back 1,000 years, how did you realise there was that kind of a connection? And again, going back to this idea of these things containing data, there's a company over here now that's making what are essentially CDs, tiny little discs, out of glass, and they're writing data into these CDs in 5D using lasers. So pretty much everything that's known about humanity can fit in a couple of these discs. You know, so the question there is not so much, you know, can it be done? Because obviously it can be done. The question is, how do we get that sort of data back out of something like a crystal skull? Yeah. We've got the skulls. There must be things in there, in the data, in those crystals. Right. We just don't know how to get the information back out. So all of a sudden, that rather silly sounding legend from, you know, 1970s mind, body, spirit fairs, you know, that kind of, you know, they're all going to talk to each other and suddenly this information's going to pop out. Yeah. Actually, scientifically, it turns out to be possible. You know, so it's kind of a bit crazy. The bit in that question you asked me that doesn't really work is the idea that it's aliens. Because these gigantic skulls, these Paracas skulls that are usually put forward as being extraterrestrials, the DNA and the science that's been done on those, they are a different form of us. So they are a different species. They are as earthbound, I suppose, as we are. The difference being, you know, if you happen to be born with the same kind of talent as Einstein, but your head happens to be 3 times bigger, it's like walking around with 3 Einsteins stacked on your shoulders. So I said to somebody the other day, I said, you get 10 people like that in a room, and you walk in and you say, you know, how do we build a pyramid? You know, they'll just get the notepad out and be, yeah, 2 minutes later, there you go, that's how you build a pyramid. Because they are so super intelligent, the brains must have been enormous, you know. And that kind of puts a lot of ancient technology and ancient buildings and structures. It puts that into context, you know. Wow. If you want to know how to put a 300-ton block halfway up a wall, you go and ask one of these guys with the enormous heads, and they can work it out, you know. And that does seem to be their position in society in the past. They were always regarded as super beings, you know. And this tiny little book, I'll do it again. I'll put the advert up. There you go. Crystal Skulls of Human Heads. Let's get the plug in.
Thank you.
This tiny little book has got all of that information in it, it's all proper, you know, proper evidence.
I know. First of all, I just want to say how intelligent you are. It is, it's not this thick. Okay, it's not this thick. But there's not even how many pages are there in there again?
Do you know, I've never looked. I don't think it actually goes to 100. I think it's only.
You never looked.
I don't remember how it turned out. Gosh, there's actually only 91 pages.
I know.
It's only 91 pages long. And that's illustrated. I mean, it's got photographs and pictures and things in there as well. So it's quite an easy read. You can sit there and read it, but it's full of those wow moments, like I just said about quartz and what quartz is capable of. You'll be thumbing through and you'll be thinking, wow, I didn't know this. You know, I just didn't know. So I'm hoping sort of people pick it up and it's more like a menu where they can go off and have a look at other subjects and expand on that, you know. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping it gets people thinking, you know, talking about stuff.
Well, how can they not? I mean, it's loaded with so much information, and, you know, from a lot of people have let's just say, abductees. They're just telling their story, and you know, there is some evidence of having implants and things like this, but I don't think anything's actually been proven on that yet, even though there is, I think I did see a show where they did say that. Yeah, so in this book, it's great because you are an archaeologist, and so you do have proof of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I mean that's not to say that the whole alien abductee thing is wrong, because there is proof. There is physical evidence that those implants have gone into people, and I wouldn't for a moment disagree with people that have been abducted and had those experiences. In fact, the last chapter in the book actually offers a solution to that. because I was very much aware that you've got this thing with people. Let's go into the past and say, okay, you're looking at us species from the past. It's a bit like on Star Trek where all the aliens look the same. They've all got heads, 2 hands, 2 arms, and all the rest of it, and they basically look like us. Come forward in time, and the aliens have got the same thing. They've got 1 head, 2 hands, 2 arms, 2 legs. Doesn't matter what type they are. They all seem to look very much like us. So I thought, well, what would happen if they were us? What happens if these aliens are us? What happens if they're a different species of us? Except, because they are super intelligent, maybe they've solved the problems of time and space. Just maybe, if you've got the capacity of Einstein or Stephen Hawking or whatever, just maybe their societies in the past have done things differently, and they've put all their time and effort into solving different things. So then I started to think, well, do they come from the future? Well, no, because that's going to wreck it. That's going to cause a paradox that will ruin time and space. Do they come from another planet? Possibly not, because that's a big ask. That is a difficult thing to do to get here. What happens if they come from the past? What happens if it doesn't matter then whether they interfere, because they're interfering with our future, not theirs? And if they're coming from the past, they would want to know where we are now. So that would explain why people get abducted, why they're interested in looking at cattle, cattle mutilations and examining people and abducting them. And, the whole what they're doing and the way they're going about it makes perfect sense. If they're coming to have a look at where we've ended up, it kind of answers that question. And that's in the book. It's in the last chapter. I think it's called Alien Heads.
I can't believe it. I mean, what you're saying...
It just makes sense.
No, I mean, you are making sense of all this on fact-driven stuff. And I didn't mean to say that... I'm sorry to the people that out there that I did say there is no evidence, okay?
The funny thing is, as an archaeologist, I got asked to go and do an archaeological dig on a UFO crash. And I thought exactly the same as you. I thought, this is nonsense. How can I, as an archaeologist, put my name to a project like that? And then the fellow that was asking me to do it, he said, we've already been on the site, and I've got a suitcase full of pieces of it in my garage. Now, at that point, I was like, that changes everything, because now we're dealing with something that very clearly can be shown to physically exist. And as time went on, that became Europe's Roswell, which was a DVD documentary that I produced in the 1990s, looking at this UFO crash, or as UAPs as they're called now, that occurred in Wales. But it got physical remains of it. So, yes, I mean, quite rightly be sceptical by all means until somebody does actually do that. And, here's a piece of whatever, then you're in different territory then. It's more a case of then trying to explain what it is you're looking at, which in the case of this debris, it came down in the 1980s. It's made of duralumin. We didn't have duralumin in the 1980s. It didn't exist. Even in the 1990s, this little piece, this fragment that I've got, it just should not have existed. But that speaks to other things.
I don't care. I don't care. What type of fragment did you get? I don't care. We got to talk about. Come on, Mark. We got to talk about this because everyone's going to want to know out there. Okay, so he's talking about a fragment. What does he mean by that? Huh?
Okay.
Come on, Mark.
What they did back in the 1990s was they went and visited the site, and a crash retrieval team had cleared the site. People had already been through it and taken it all away, probably Ministry of Defence or whatever. But they hadn't cleared the bit where the trees were. So they went into this bit where the trees were and they found, I think it was 5 pieces of what appeared to be sheet metal and 2 pieces that looked very much like aluminium tin foil. But the common denominator with all of them was they were covered in hexagons. So this tin foil was made into like a sort of a non-compactable hexagonal block. And then the outer shell pieces, which they've got, have got all this rubber coating on it made up of hexagons. And it distinctly looked like something had smacked into the trees and smashed and then flown off. scattering all this debris over a couple of fields.
Wow.
So what we're looking at, I mean, nowadays, if that happened, you'd probably say, well, it's a drone or it's an aircraft that's, had its control surfaces smashed off or whatever. But back then, when we were looking at it in the 1990s, that sort of thing just didn't exist. So it is super technology, it's superior technology. And the little piece I've got has just got this, it's a tiny piece of metal with just a little bit of this green rubberized coating on it. Because the guys that found it, they knew that the MOD were going to come and ask for it back. They knew that was going to happen at some point. And sure enough, the Men in Black did rock up at this guy's door and say, "Can we have our
You're
bits
so
back?"
funny. Okay, now you're going into the Men in Black. Okay.
Well, they turned up. They were unmarked vehicles, dressed in black suits, black glasses. They turned up with little plastic glasses on that this friend of mine couldn't read. But what my friend had done was he'd made 100 of these key rings with these little fragments in, and he'd sent them all out to different people like me. And he basically said to these guys who presumably come from the Ministry of Defence, he basically said to them, "Look, as long as you leave me alone, all those key rings stay with whoever. But if you come and try and take these pieces off me, I will notify everybody to release those pieces to the media."
Wow.
What a great idea.
Superb, what a genius. And these guys who were dressed in black got back in their unmarked vehicles and just drove off. Game over. Nothing they could do.
Wow.
So there we have it, Gary Rowe was the name of the chap that did the investigation and did that with those pieces.
Okay, was this in a different book that you did?
No, it's in a documentary. It's called Europe's Roswell. I think it's on something like Amazon Prime or Netflix. You'll be able to watch it. It exists out there, and you actually get to see all of the pieces in that.
Okay, what's the name of it again?
It's called Europe's Roswell.
Europe's Roswell. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. Okay, last question on that. Did they have it tested?
Yes.
Okay.
Gary had a friend who was on his recovery team that had contacts. Over here we have British Aerospace, which care for anything that's flying around basically, and he took it to this friend at British Aerospace, and that's how we know that the metal composition of it is duralumin. But this weird green rubbery substance and some resin that was on it, they just couldn't say what it was. It wasn't a compound or a thing that they'd ever seen before. So back in the 1990s, it was a mystery. It genuinely was a mystery. And we've still not had any adequate explanation for it, even up to this day. So bringing it back to the book again, I don't cast doubt. I don't cast doubt on those sort of things at the end of the book, quite the opposite. That section on alien heads, I am wrestling with the various issues that we're dealing with when faced with what appears to be an alien species very similar to ourselves.
Wow. I mean, you just talk so much about my mind is reeling. It's like, and I have to butt in here and there, but then
please do.
I want to ask a question, but I'm trying to wait, but then I forget. Because we do these shows live. I mean, Dee's phone has gone off twice today. We don't edit, any of this stuff. So, okay.
I have to be careful what I say.
Yep.
Okay, so we already talked about where the past races are different from us. Okay, so what do you think? Is this book hopeful or about our future? You've said that it's not, that it is hopeful.
Yes, I think so. As I say, the idea, I think, with the book really is to open people up to the fact that the past perhaps was very different from the way we think of it, and that there were more of us. We were a more diverse species in the past. The future, obviously, we seem to be going downhill, where there's less of us and there's less stuff happening. But at the same time, through it all, we're still here. We haven't gone extinct. We've managed to survive. And the planet and everything on it also that we've got now has survived, And that's an enormously positive message, I remember growing up in the 70s and 80s and everyone being terrified we were going to blow ourselves to bits with nuclear weapons,
Right.
And then, Yeah, and the next minute it's, some asteroid or meteorite's going to come down and wham, we're all going to go, because that's how the dinosaurs went, supposedly. And then, we've had tsunamis and floods and nuclear reactors going off, and then we have the pandemic, and it's like every year they seem to invent something new for us to worry about, and the green agenda, we're all suddenly going to get fried because the Earth's atmosphere is going to vanish, the sun's going to microwave us.
Yeah.
Well, what archaeology and history very clearly shows is that that's nonsense. It's absolute rubbish. The planet just does what the planet does. It just gets on with it, and we as a species adapt. Even Darwin, if you go all the way back to Darwin's Origin of Species, that is actually a book about adaptation. It's just about different species and different animals changing to fit their environment. He got that bit. He even said himself, the whole science that he created, he said was going to change. And I think DNA is what's changed that, because we know now that we don't, start off as slime and turn into a lizard and then crawl onto dry land and, run around as a crocodile for a bit and then turn into a monkey that then turns into a man. That's just, it doesn't happen. That T-shirt with all those figures on it's absolute rubbish. If anything, we're going back the opposite way. We've lost more species than we've actually got. So we're devolving, we're not evolving. And then DNA comes along, and guess what? That's exactly what DNA says. It doesn't change, it doesn't mutate, it doesn't do anything by accident. You've either got to force it to change or accept the fact that that's how we're programmed, And every single bit of it, if you zoom right back and you just look at the book in general, it all speaks to the idea that somewhere in the past there was some form of intelligent design. This didn't happen by accident. Somebody fired a starting pistol and off we went. Now, some people would say, oh, that's God, but again, some people would say it's an alien, it's alien intervention, it's, it comes from elsewhere or whatever. I don't try and answer that question, because it's not something I think that we're ever going to have a satisfactory answer to, not in our lifetime anyway. But yes, everything, mathematics, structure, you don't sort of get order out of chaos, you only end up getting chaos out of order. Everything devolves. So that's in the book as well. I think I dealt with that pretty much in the first chapter, because it is a big elephant in the room, that you have to sort of move people's ideas away, that, everyone thinks things are getting better. And actually, that's not really what history and archaeology and science and archaeoscience is saying. Things are actually not getting better. They're either ticking along as they are, or they're getting worse, for certain species, like pandas and, whatever else is disappearing nowadays, elephants, rhinos, they're all gradually vanishing. And we're the worse off for it, just imagine if we still had these guys with the enormous heads. We wouldn't be suffering half the problems we're suffering now, because they would solve the problems, they would sort that out. If we had giants, and we had these little guys still alive, these 3 foot high guys, the world would just be an amazing place. But rather than that, we seem to have chosen to just be stuck as we are. Anything that's different, that doesn't fit the picture, doesn't fit the bill, we just kind of rule it out of order. We push it to one side. And we shouldn't be doing that. We should be doing the opposite. All these odd people and strange people and people with strange ideas and different ways of thinking, we should be pulling them all in. I'm a fantastic fan of Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk is absolutely incredible. And he's one of these extraordinary people. 20, 30 years ago, they'd have all thought he had some kind of medical problem and shoved him to one side, But it's people like that who potentially could change the world, We've lost too many of them. That's what, the archaeology and history from the past is telling us.
Wow. I remember when you sent me this book as a PDF, okay?
Yeah.
And I was reading it, and it was so scientifically based that I could only read, Mark, like one chapter at a time.
Yeah, that's fine.
And that would have to take me, because I'm not totally scientifically based, but I think a lot of people need to hear this, because it is.
Yes.
But I would have to take a paragraph and think about that for 3 days. Well, by the time that we were going to have our interview, I know I was never going to finish the book. And that's when I emailed you, and I thought, oh my God, I have to think about one paragraph for 3 days. I just,
Well, I'll let you into a little secret, okay? The whole idea started off as a PowerPoint. You know, these things where you stand there with a clicker thing and like pretty pictures come up. It all started off as a PowerPoint, and I've actually been going around doing that PowerPoint now for 10 years. So I don't blame you for taking a while to sort of get the grips with it, because it took me 10 years to actually decide to sit down and write it down. So can you imagine the amount of stuff that I've accumulated in that time, you know, and what have you. I am definitely not the fastest person when it comes to putting stuff together. Like I say, there was a guy years ago called Colin Wilson, and he used to rattle out sort of 10, 12, 14 books a year. I mean, that man must have been an absolute, you know, god with a small g. I don't know how he does that, you know, how he's passed away now, sadly, and he was in the same field as me. You know, some of his books are really, really heavy going, and he's dealing with, you know, histories and mysteries and discoveries and all that. But it takes me 3 years to put a book together that's only 90-odd pages long. So I feel your pain. You know, I can understand it. Nobody should ever feel bad about struggling with that, because, like I say, I cheated. It took me 10 years to put it together.
I wrote 2 books, and it took me about 5 or 6 years. Okay.
Yeah,
so
it's a big ask to do a book.
Yeah, I know the whole process, and it's pretty excruciatingly painful.
Yeah. Well, I've just finished under lockdown. I've just finished a book on King Arthur, and this will make you chuckle, this, which I started in 1977. I think it's took 44 years to finish it. So that's probably, I think it must be a world record, you know, the longest book ever to write. So that's ready to go now. I mean, if anybody out there wants to publish a book on King Arthur, please let me know, you know, make contact with me, because it's sat there now, ready to go, same kind of standard as this one, same thing, photographs and everything.
Then why doesn't Philip Mantell do it?
I don't think he's an expert in King Arthur. In fact, I know he's not an expert in King Arthur. You know, when it comes to flying saucers, UFOs, UAPs, that's Philip. I love him to bits for that.
He's
that's
really,
Philip all over.
I mean, he's huge. He's way up there. So
he really knows his onions. He really does.
Oh my God. So
but to become a specialist like that is different from. I mean, I'm an archaeologist, so I can cheat. I can do something like King Arthur and get away with it because I've got that sort of background, you know.
Now there was, okay, I know we want to talk about this, so I don't want to move on to the next subject, but is there anything else that you want to say about this book? And let's see it one more time on the screen.
Oh, definitely,
we can
yes.
get
Here
this
we go.
At Amazon, and crystal skulls and human heads, as you can see it. The beautiful cover of and the link will be in, you know, we'll have the link there. So, I
suppose if anybody wants to get any of the books I've written, they're all on Amazon. So there you go. That's dead simple.
Right.
It couldn't be simpler than that. If anybody wants to find the books, just type it in Amazon. The only one that might cause a bit of a problem is I did one about Robin Hood, but I spelt Robin Hood, ROBYNHOODE, which is the old English way of spelling it. So if you go looking for that one, don't forget it's ROBYNHOODE. Otherwise, you might not be able to find it. But if you typed in Robin Hood in my name, you know, chances are it would come up.
Well, the easiest way that I do it is I just I just type in Mark Ollie. And all of your stuff comes up, and that's the best way, and that's Mark OLLY.
That's the one.
That's find it. Okay. Is there anything else you want to say about this book?
Well, I'll carry on in the vein of an advert. If you want to buy the book as a gift for somebody, and Philip's going to hate me for saying this, but buy it in hardback, because the hardback version is amazing. I mean, it's the first time I've had an opportunity to do a book in hardback, but it's matte finish and the cover's amazing, the presentation's superb. But the reason Philip doesn't want me to say that is we get less money off the hardbacks than we do off the paperbacks. They pay us more if you buy paperback. Right. But if you're going to get it as a gift, if you want it for a birthday or for Christmas or whatever, then go for the hardback. But other than that, just take your time with it. Go through it. You know, it's a leisurely. You can go through it as a leisurely read. It's in nice blocks. You know, the chapters are not too long.
That's right.
There's loads of illustrations and photographs in there. You know, it's not a difficult book. It's making science. It's making these subjects accessible. And then once you've got the subject, you can always go and, have a look on the internet, go and have a look and see what else is out there relating to that, if it catches your attention. But it's a fabulous place to start, as a subject matter.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic place to start.
Absolutely. Now, I didn't write this down, but you have a second book that I was really interested in. And I don't remember what it was. It was number 2 on Amazon. It was a flying thing or some crypto or something like that. On the
Okay, well, I can tell you what the books are. The first one is The Disappearing Ninth Legion. Okay. And that is about the Ghost Legion of York, because we have a city over here called York. And it was a Roman legion that appears to have marched out of York and then vanished, never to be seen again.
Okay.
So that was the first one, and that essentially is an investigation into ghosts and Roman archaeology. The second one is The Life and Times of the Real Robin Hood, R-O-B-Y-N-H-W-O-D-E, which is literally everything that we know that's factual about the existence of Robin Hood. And I started off thinking Robin Hood was just made up, like most people do, just thought, oh, he's some kind of superhero or whatever. I actually believe he existed now, because there's enough evidence in there to say he was a real character.
Right.
The third one is probably the one you've got in mind, and that's Revealing the Green Man.
Yes!
Yay! Now that's an interesting one, because that actually partners very well. That partners really well with Crystal Skulls.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Because I mentioned earlier on about this idea that the ancients had, that perhaps the planet was like an enormous head, that it had all this life force in it. But that essentially is what the Green Man is. It's a head with all this life force around it. And they applied that to nature. They applied it to the planet. So if you really want to get an insight into that, you want to push into the oldest religion perhaps that we have surviving on planet Earth. Okay. That's the one to go for.
So the Crystal Skulls and Human Heads and that book would be something that you kind of want to read back to back?
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
Okay.
Although I'd do them backwards. I'd start with Crystal Skulls and then I'd go back to the Green Man.
Right.
But the format and the length of the book and the illustrations and everything are very, very similar. Very similar. And that's on purpose.
Right. And of course, all your covers are fantastic. So, last words here, Mark. I mean, first of all, you've just blown my mind. I mean, the way that you talk, and you're so absolutely intelligent. I mean, your IQ is probably off the charts. But
it's never been measured, to be honest. So I don't really know.
I mean, I'm never usually a loss for words. Okay. I have butted in here and there, so I did get a little bit of that, thank God. But you talk so much and about something that it's mind-boggling to me to think of, like I said before, think of something and want to have a question, but you keep talking and forget and this and that. That's why I was saying I had to take it, one paragraph at a time.
Yes.
Because that's just the kind of person I am. That's how I read. But what I love about you is that you're an archaeologist, and I've actually never had an archaeologist on my show. No, never. So I love this, and it's something totally different, totally new, extremely, absolutely believable because there's evidence. I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show, unless you want to say anything else, because I'm sitting here with my eyes open really wide going, I don't know if I need any more coffee. I think I'll switch to water.
If anybody actually wants to come and meet me, and by some miracle they happen to be in the UK, I think it's around about the 23rd, 24th, 25th of this month, June. I'm doing the big UFO Awakening Expo 2022, which is at Blackpool, which is a big conference centre not too far away from here. I'm doing that for, I think it's Zohar Entertainment, it's the overriding people that do it. But I'm actually taking a display of archaeological objects there, and people can come and talk to me and they can see the actual objects. Now, the crystal skull is going to be there, the UFO fragment's going to be there, and then a lot of other stuff as well from different collections. is all going to be there. I think there's 15 display cabinets in all. So just as a parting shot, if anybody wants to come and see me and they happen to be in the UK, get yourself along to the expo. It's called Awakening Expo 2022, and the main speaker is Eric von Daniken.
Oh, no way!
It says it all. Yeah,
no
it says it all, doesn't it?
Oh my God!
Go and have a look on the internet. Have a look for Expo in Blackpool and Awakening Expo, and you'll find it.
Okay,
send
me. Make sure you send me that.
a ticket.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, and I want a ticket. I want a plane ticket, and I want a high-end hotel with maid service and a limo to drive me there. And I can stand there with you.
It'd be amazing if you could. I'm only a guest, you know what I mean? I'm kind of the pet archaeologist at the parks in the foyer with all the cabinets, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm saying hi to everybody as they walk past, you know, it's that kind of...
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not on the stage with Eric. I wish I was, but I'm not.
Well, I mean, you've done TV, so...
You're a drummer.
And you can also... And you can bring your drums.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'd fit in the car with all the other stuff that I'm taking.
Oh my God.
Well, okay, I suppose the best parting shot I can give you, I've done all the adverts, got all that out of the way. If anybody wants to link with me and know what I'm up to, I've got a Facebook page. And everybody, I think the world over, can do Facebook. Just come and find me and send me a friend request and link with me on Facebook. And then you can see what the band's doing. You can see all the videos we put up. You can listen to the audio.
Okay.
And you'll get all the adverts.
Okay. What is that under Mark Ollie?
Yes. It's just type in Mark Ollie.
Did I subscribe to you?
I think you are linked to me.
I must be.
Yeah, I think we've talked on Messenger, so I think you have. My photograph's in blue, and I'm holding a crystal ball on the photo.
Yes. Oh my God.
Well, I'm just saying to everybody else, anybody else that hears this, you know, do the same thing.
Yeah.
Come and find me. So it's Amazon for the product, and it's Facebook for me.
Get on board.
Okay, really so we'll put the Amazon. We're going to put the thing in the UK. Actually, I do a lot of interviews from the UK. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And probably some of these people are going to that expo.
Yeah.
So they, you know, they probably already are. Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And so this will give people a lot of information. And, you know, if anyone wants to email me and you want to know something, or, you know, text me, they always come through, even if you're not my friend on Facebook, text me and I'll give you the information.
Or just send the question on to me. You know, if anybody has any questions for me, go through you. Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, I've had that before where people feel uncomfortable and they don't want to go with you, so they go through me. It's like, what? I don't get it. Okay, but whatever. And just do it. So anyways, well, I want to thank you for blowing my mind. And so it's nice to have my mind blown for once. I'm going to have a lot to think about today. And I know everybody's just going to love this show. You guys are going to love it. You've already loved it. He's already been on. I'm sure he'll be on again about another book. So and so anyone, Crystal Skulls and Human Heads, Mark Ollie. Mark Ollie is also on Facebook. Okay, so and that's OLLY. Okay, all right. So we're gonna say over and out, right? Unless there's anything else. Okay, and I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today and making my mind a piece of mush. And we'll say goodbye to all of those people out there that have watched the show, and we thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.